just make a funny noise in my live.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like we're streaming live on Facebook. So how is everyone?
Yeah, good, thanks, Stephen.
Good. So if you've just joined us live on Facebook, I've finally done it. I've got 4 people on the line, so I'm building in numbers. So the idea is to break Zoom. So we've got 10,000 people is the limit of Zoom. So I've got 4, so I'm well on my way. There's one more than last week. But tonight I've been joined by a couple of very special people. So I've got 2 of the team members. So Sammy Rose, who works in our Cambridge location. We've got Tiff, who works down in London. And we've got Barry Small. So Barry,
Hi.
Mail, sorry. So Barry, would you like to introduce yourself, Barry?
Yeah, so I am a therapist working at a private psychiatric hospital in London, and I teach at the Royal Academy and at RADA on resilience and creativity, and I do a bit of meditation teaching and teach Qigong.
Oh, brilliant. So you actually, you're a colleague of one of our acupuncturists, aren't you, John?
That's right, yeah. He came to learn Qigong from us. So, so that's how I got to know John, yeah.
Brilliant. So if you've just joined us on Facebook, we're actually going to be talking about how to improve your resilience. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about some of the factors that affect resilience and why it's such a big thing, and it should be on your mind now if it's not. And hopefully it's something that you don't need to do much about because you're as tough as an old boot. But for those people that are struggling with the changes that are going on and just finding it difficult to adapt, then this might be something that's useful for you. And we're going to try and leave you with 3 top tips at the end, which hopefully will make it really useful and just some practical things that you can do at home to help improve your mindset and to help improve your own resilience as well. So Barry, it's probably a good idea to start with you. So what is resilience?
Well, it's my definition of it, or the one that I use, is the ability to adapt to or reduce vulnerability to stress or adversity.
Right.
That kind of applies, at the psychological level and at physical level, all kinds of levels. But yeah, basically the ability to adapt to or reduce your vulnerability to stress or adversity. That's the way I look at it.
Brilliant. So stress is quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Because everyone sees stress in different ways, right? So Sam, you're actually a student, aren't you, as well as working with us?
Yeah,
How
I am.
How do students deal with stress at uni? What course are you doing, by the way?
Oh, I'm doing zoology, so I'm basically doing animals, basically, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What made you do that?
So I do that at Anglia Ruskin in Cambridge, so not the Cambridge, but Anglia Ruskin. It's still a good uni though.
Still Cambridge?
Yeah, it's still Cambridge.
So how do students deal with stress at uni?
Well, we have to kind of plan. It's a lot of time planning really, and actually just trying to get our priorities in order, so we know that that's due in maybe in 2 weeks, so we know that we need to prioritize one assessment over the others. But with revision, it's quite hard because you need a lot of motivation, and that can stress you out as well. But usually it's trying to keep a calm head and just trying to kind of get one bit out of the way with at a time, rather than trying to overload yourself with loads of information and then you're kind of I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. So it's very good with time management, really, just to time it and make sure that you're not kind of, stressing yourself out. So as long as you've got a plan in order, so you know that I've got 2 hours, I can revise this for 2 hours, then I can take a break and then revise this for another 2 hours. Maybe I can listen to a video and then have another break. And then just kind of, as long as you can plan it out, you'll be fine.
Yeah. But Barry, do you find that's an important factor when it comes to dealing with stresses and creating resilience, having that plan or structure in place?
Yeah, that's one of the big things that people are struggling with at the moment. Because everything's changed. Their working week, is up in the air. It's very easy to let kind of work bleed into all of the times that often you had, free time. I was talking to from a suitable distance, 2 meters away, I was talking to a woman down the road, and
social distancing, have you?
Absolutely.
Good.
She works for one of the big government organisations, and she said that she's finding now people are just organising these Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings, and she said she can be sitting down from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So the structure of her day, and that happens on Saturdays and Sundays as well.
Yeah.
So a level of kind of discipline over that, just structuring your day, getting up. I mean, there's a whole load of things about that time structuring that don't just affect you psychologically, but just things like circadian rhythms. There was a fantastic program on Horizon about the body clock and about the benefits of getting up at a particular point in the day, going to bed at a particular point in the day, controlling the types of light that you're getting at different points in the day, even structures like that, just can make a big difference, because the circadian clock in your brain does not run at 24 hours. So unless you reset it regularly at different points in the day, again, you're going to get problems. So structure.
Okay. I guess where Sam sees the structure as a student, that's quite a useful way of dealing with the kind of psychological stress and the pressures that can exert themselves on you if you're a student and you're in, like, it's almost that element of external control, isn't it? So having the structure and the timetable allows you to control the bits that you can control, which I guess is a really important part of it. Because I guess at the moment people probably feel really out of control because we can't control the virus, and we're being told to stay in our homes, and that creates more external pressures and control on us from that point of view. Tiff, so you've got a really interesting background, and that's why I wanted you to come on board, because I think it's the dynamic of what you bring to our team meetings is really, really good. Now, you work as a receptionist for us, don't you?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, but you're so insightful. It's great. So tell us about this, your background, because you've got quite an interesting background and your interests in like energy and healing and like the mindset and stuff.
So it's just really more of an interest that I picked up as a teen. I was always interested in stuff of an esoteric nature, and energy and crystals and healing and things of that nature. And I think it's just led me to study people's behavior and perception and reality, and just observing different situations and how you respond as well. So working with the public is a really good thing for me, because I get to meet so many different types of people. And there's like you can store like a mental log almost. It's like people come into your lives, and it's like you recognize the frequencies because you've met that type of person before. So then you know how to respond to them. So yeah, always learning, always evolving, but very, very. I've always been an observer. As a child, I was very observant, so I used to listen a lot, and just, I was quite quiet as a child. I'm not now, but as a child, now you can't shut me up. But as a child, I was very observant. Yeah.
So I thought it'd be quite useful for you to be here with Barry, because I think Barry, your background as with your therapy and your meditation, I think the scientific aspects of where you're coming from is really quite a useful thing to blend with what Tiffany's learning through her observation and behavior and things like that. And from a practical point of view, I think Sam would benefit a lot from being a student and working on that. And obviously with animals as well, that's hugely, you must find that a lot with the animals that you work with, that they have their own rhythms and lots going on with them as well. And I think from a real basic level, in terms of animals being more basic than complex humans with emotions, well, animals have emotions as well, right, Sam?
Yeah, they do. because at the moment I'm doing a module called mammalogy, so I'm learning about all the different mammals, and it's amazing of how much adaptation, how much morphology and evolution has actually made them just wonderful creatures. There's like an animal that can drink about 12 glasses of wine in like 3 sap a day. It's brilliant, but they don't get drunk. Yeah.
That's just through adaptation to the environment, right?
Yeah, and also like I don't do behaviour. I'm not really on animal behaviour. I'm zoology, but my supervisor for my dissertation, she does kind of manage animal behaviour. She does those students, and it's just like the amount of stuff she's given me to do as like desktop projects and stuff that I can research into is just, it's amazing. I just love animals. I think they're just wonderful creatures personally, and I think it's just.
Do you get to actually work with them directly, or is it more study of them?
It's more study of them. I mean, I'm actually quite disappointed because of everything that's happened. I would have gone to Uganda this year, so I would have actually been working with them. So it would have been for tropical ecology. So I would have been working with mainly invertebrates. But there's like a lot of like monkeys, and I would have got to see like maybe an elephant, maybe a couple of cats and stuff. Like it would have been amazing, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it'll be postponed to next year, so hopefully I still get to go.
Sounds very interesting, very interesting. So Barry, from my understanding, from my neuroscience background, animals are very interesting, aren't they? Because they have in terms of the evolutionary scale, where obviously we should be more advanced in most cases, hopefully, than animals, but from our point of view, we're said to have this mammalian brain, aren't we? That's still an evolutionary part of our ancestry as a more primitive species. So we were talking about the autonomic nervous system, weren't we? So how does that figure into our adaptation to stresses later on in terms of how we adapt to things and how we still manifest some of this primitive behaviors?
Yeah, I'm kind of smiling because I'm thinking, well, I could talk for about an hour on this, so I'll try.
Just an hour. We've got 60 minutes exactly.
Absolutely. But let's just, well, I mean, it's absolutely crucial. Everybody, or a lot of people, work on the psychology of resilience, and obviously that's important. But there's a whole load of stuff around brain structure about resilience as well, and the way that different parts of the brain connect up to one another. And that's a kind of, that is in a way an important distinction between mammals and humans. Humans come into the world much less hooked up than animals. Yeah. So that's why we're so helpless at the beginning, because our brains hook up depending upon the kind of environment that we grow up in. So that's a whole level of stuff. But at the level of the autonomic nervous system, and just to explain it for people who don't know what that is,
that'd be a good idea.
It's effectively like an accelerator system and a braking system.
Yeah.
The way I describe it to people is ideally, so the accelerator system's taking all the data in from the outside, and the braking system's taking all the data from the outside, and ideally, like a really skillful driver balancing their car on a hill, you got those two things feathering all the time. And what that controls is the level of underlying arousal in throughout your entire system.
Yeah.
But we come into the world and that doesn't work. When we come into the world, a newborn baby's either accelerator full on, or else they're brake full on, pretty much. If you've had babies, you'll know that. Yeah, they're either kind of yowling or else they're asleep. Mm-hmm. And so it's a feature of humanity, which is somewhat different from humans, is that it's an acquired skill in a human being to do that. And so one of the underlying reasons that some people are not resilient is because they haven't developed that underlying neurological and autonomic skill of doing that. So they tend to bounce backwards and forwards between high and low states of arousal. But also you can trash it. You know, you can trash that mechanism. They call it allostatic load. So you can do it easily with things like cocaine or alcohol. But I mean, you can do it more subtly with Red Bull and caffeine and that kind of stuff. And again, that will stop it working as well.
Barry, do you think stress, long periods of stress can trash it as well?
That's the other third thing. Yeah. So long periods of external stresses or one really big shock. I mean, it's not an exact analogy, but it's like that system blows a fuse.
Yeah.
And so rather than it balancing in the middle, you tend to kind of swing backwards and forwards in high arousal. And the problem is that because people are generally not taught about that system and the massive knock-on effect it has on all of your organs within your body, and also the way that your brain functions, when you start bouncing backwards and forwards a bit, you start to end up getting all these really weird symptoms, which then in turn people get really stressed about. So it just becomes a vicious circle and everything just gets worse and worse. So when I'm working with people at the most extreme end of lack of resilience, people who've been traumatized or people like that, you know, it's like the number one thing is to get their autonomic nervous system back up and running again.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of symptoms, so you mentioned that that at a certain age that starts to like get wired together and controlled by the higher centers, but the autonomic basically means that it's automatic, so it happens without our regulation. So it's something that when our brain is trashed, as you put it, all of these things kind of go a little bit out of control, whether it's digestive function or the heart rate or irregularity there, or pain perception can be another one. So people become much more sensitive to pain, or they lose sensitivity to pain altogether as a result of that dysfunction of the autonomics. But what age does that start to become more regulated in terms of childhood? Do you remember?
Well, from the stuff that I've been taught and understand, it's a kind of constant and continuous development, all the way through up until about 21. It improves, and that's why you get stages of development that happen. Yeah. And often that's when the autonomic nervous system has gone past a certain point. Yeah. Once the autonomic system has gone past a certain point, certain brain functions can be more operative than before.
Yeah. So I guess in children, things like bedwetting and like exercise tolerance, that's probably quite a big stage that they go through where they can suddenly tolerate a lot more exercise and they start to develop, and their skeletal maturation starts to increase as well. But I think Tiffany, sorry, what were you saying?
Impulse control also is a big
impulse control. Yeah. So cognitive control as well. I think you must have seen it, Tiffany, with your son growing up, right? Yeah,
definitely. They just become the resilience that definitely is a constant with them. At a younger age, I do feel like they are more susceptible to feeling pain and high levels of pain and things like that. So yeah, I do agree with what you said.
What about their like more energetic changes that you see in people as they like you see quite a lot of people who are in pain when they come and see us, and Sam, you do as well, don't you? Do you see a difference in terms of their energy, in terms of how they interact with you or things like that when they're in lots of pain versus when because pain's a good example of when people enter back into this primitive state again where they just can't tolerate things, they're a bit short-tempered, or they can be short-tempered. They'll try and put a lid on it most of the time, I imagine, because of the type of people we deal with, but they're probably just a bit more irritable. But do you see that kind of things with people that are in lots of pain or like coming up asking for help from you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like I had when I was in the clinic, there was a guy who came in and he wanted to get an appointment. I think it was with Rachel, because he said, "Oh, I heard Rachel's really good." And I was like, "Yeah, no, she's fantastic. All of practitioners are really." But he was holding his shoulder, and he said, "My shoulder's in a lot of pain," and I could see that he was, because he was like grinding his teeth, and he was just a little bit like, as you say, short-tempered, and was a bit, I just really want to get this booked in now, and I just want to get it seen to. But then literally after he had been seen, after a couple of months, he was a completely different person, and it was amazing. It was like he was more calm, he was a lot more happier. I saw him walking in and out of the gym, and he just seemed like a different person. And it's like Tiff said about like observing people, and you see a massive change, and it is great. It is brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. And what about you, Tiffany? Have you noticed that with people's energy and the way they deal with it?
Definitely, and especially stress levels as well, just because they may have a constant issue and they may have a really stressful job as well. So
you're in the city, aren't you? So you're going to see a lot of really highly stressed people.
So especially say maybe 4 o'clock, by the time they come in, they're just done. They don't want to communicate. They just want to get seen to. So they want it as simple as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do quite a lot of behind the scenes training with the reception team on like how they interact with people, how they deal with things. But you two in particular seem to have like hit the ground running with a lot of the stuff, because you just have a very adaptable personality to dealing with that kind of person. So I guess being a student, you probably deal with stressful people all the time, Sam. So that probably toughens you up a bit.
Yeah, especially with stressful lecturers. So and also I have worked in a hotel, so I'm quite used to the high level of stressness being put onto myself. So I'm quite used to being stressed, but I can't show that to customers either or clients. So I have to I'm quite good at keeping myself cool, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like I'll be back soon. Give me a second, and so.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Tiff, I want to talk about meditation in a second, but I was trying to get Barry's input. So, Barry, are there ways that people at home could regulate their autonomic nervous system from your point of view?
Yeah, well, yeah. So, and it's important to make the distinction that there are two types of ways of doing that. There's one whole category, if you like, that are reset techniques, and they will reset you either from up there or down there, kind of back into the middle, But then there are also skill building techniques which make this work better over time, So, I mean, the one that always surprises people, and I suggest it to them, and often I kind of get a slightly old-fashioned look, but that, they'll go off and try it, is the use of smell. So the use
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's very interesting, because smell is one of the primitive senses. Well, you've got 5 senses, haven't you? But it's one of the primitive ones in terms of activating emotional centers in the brain, right?
Absolutely. So the olfactory, the smell system, basically is plugged into the brain without going through a junction box called the thalamus. So the thalamus takes in stuff and moves it around, organized. But the smell hits the brain without going through that. So one of the things that I do with people who get triggered into these high states is I say get like 4 of these bottles of essential oils, It doesn't have to be stuff that is supposed to be relaxing, just 4 smells that are strong and that you like. And when you feel yourself, all that internal stuff beginning to bubble, or you feel yourself kind of being knocked off, just take one of those out and give it a sniff. And people think, well, that's not going to work, is it? But the feedback that I get, I mean, I didn't come up with that. That's a kind of well-researched, brain chemistry thing. But I would, it's just fantastic. I mean, I use it with people who go into extreme states of dissociation. And if you've never seen that, it seems a bit weird, but basically somebody would be talking to you like that, and then they'll do that, just like turn off,
Right.
Or they'll kind of collapse, and they can be like that for an hour, but you get a little smell, and it's not like smelling salts, it is just, it activates something in the autonomic nervous system that just brings them back to that mid-range state, and it's just fantastic. So that's if you like on the reset technique side, and there's loads of those. But then on the skill building, there's mind training and meditation that particular types that you can use that will increase the skill in your autonomic nervous system. And so I mean, I tend to think of meditation as mind training. Then it doesn't make it so weird. It's a bit like, and then there's all different types of mind training, just like there's all different types of physical training.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, well, I'd like to do some mind training," it's like, well, I need a bit more information than that. Just like if somebody came and said, "I want to do some physical training."
Yeah, do you know, it's really interesting because I think that I guess you guys, you probably heard about mindfulness a lot, haven't you? And Tiff, you've got someone else that you introduced me to last week, didn't you, with the meditation side of things? But it's like the missing link, but it's always been there. The mind, like, why haven't people thought that actually it's just like any other muscle in the body? If you exercise it and use it, just like doing your times tables when you're 4 and 5 years old, it's going to get better at doing that. But resilience, I guess, it's like a whole thing for a lot of people, isn't it? That they didn't realize that actually you needed to practice some of these stressful situations, get used to it, and then get better at it. Not so much that you want to put yourself in a really stressful situation to start with, but you've got to train your brain, haven't you? It's an adaptive process. So it's brilliant. It's great that people are doing it, but it takes thousands of people to die in a virus that keeps us all locked at home for people to work out that you need to train your bloody brain.
Absolutely.
So, Tiff, who was this person you introduced me to?
Was that the other day, Byron Katie?
Yes, yeah.
So Byron Katie, she's developed a process called the work, which is so it's an inquiry form of meditation where you actually observe your thoughts, and then she's come up with 4 questions to ask yourself when you're having a negative thought. So the first one is it true? The second is, do I absolutely know that it's true? The third is, how do I react when I think this thought? And the fourth is, who am I without this thought? So really observing it's specifically for negative thoughts. So really observing the negative thought and detaching yourself from it. So you are still you without that thought, and that thought can't control your current state of being unless you allow it to.
What are your thoughts on that, Barry?
Yeah, I mean, it's the fundamental thing, if you like, I try and help people to understand is, I mean, if I had a diagram, I'd draw, if I had a thing to draw, and I would. But yeah, that move from being your thinking to being your awareness.
Yeah.
Barry, if you go to share screen, I'd love to see that. If you go to share screen at the bottom of your screen.
Right. Oh, God. I have to draw it. Let me just get a bit of paper. Go on, while you're talking about something else, let me draw on a bit of paper and I'll put it up on the screen, yeah?
Okay, awesome.
So that's a form of meditation. And that would be there's many different forms of analytical meditation, that would be.
Yeah.
So analyzing something specifically. And then obviously there's mindfulness, which is just being still and being present in your body and aware of your body. There's walking meditation, there's dance, like the Sufis, the whirling dervishes, they go into a trance from a specific dance that they do, and that's a form of meditation for them. Many different forms, breath work. But yeah, analytical is definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think certain types of meditation haven't worked for me in the past that I've tried. Sam, have you ever tried meditation before I spoil the surprise?
No, I've never tried it.
No, not many people have, but I used to really fascinated with meditation ever since my neuroscience, because I realized that actually it was a great way of being able to well, you guys work for me, so you guys know how much control I like on things, right? So it's nice to know what the hell's going on in your business all the time. Not all the time, but enough so that you know when it's going wrong or right, so that you can improve it. But I do think that it's not that I'm a control freak. I just like to, I'm quite analytical, so I like to understand things so that I can put things together and put things into certain places, because that actually makes me feel quite relaxed knowing what's going on. which might be a bit weird for some people because it's a hell of a lot of information. But that kind of analytical inquiry is useful for me in my brain, because it fits with my model of the world. So I think there's so many different models of the world. So finding a type of meditation, or how would you describe meditation, Barry? Because it's got lots of different connotations, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, I do call it mind training. And,
Mind training. Right.
Yeah, and kind of interestingly, if you go back into, I think it's a thing called the Visuddhimagga, which is, if you like, the Buddhist description of all the different types of meditation that the Buddha taught. So apparently there's about 40 different types of meditation.
Yeah.
Primary one, and you're right, yeah, he would teach people different types of meditation depending upon the nature of them and their mind. But the one that he started with, I think it's called 4 elements meditation, where it's very much becoming aware of different aspects of your body. And that's, if you like, the primary one. And then depending upon your nature, he would teach you different types of meditation. But I think of it as mind training. Yeah. And of course, it's like you know, if I want to win the 100 meters sprint at the Olympics, and somebody's you know, getting me to go on a 100-mile run, that's not preparing my body to do what I want it to do at all. Yeah. So if my problem is that my mind gets very scattered, which obviously a lot of people with ADHD do, and then their mind needs to be helped to be focused on particular points. And there's particular types of meditation that's good for that. For other people, their mind is a bit too rigid and closed. And so they need mind training to help it kind of open up and become more aware of stuff. Yeah. So that's the way I look at it. Anyway, that's the way I was thinking.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So can you see this? I realise actually as I draw it that I've got doctor's handwriting. So I'll like that. But you can see that there's thinking, sensing, emoting, and acting. Yeah. Yeah. And they're all different systems in a human being. Yeah. I mean, it's more complex than this. But most people see everything out of their thinking. Yeah. And that's one of the evolutionary elements of what's happened to a human being. Our cortex, particularly our left cortex, has got very dominant, which is the bit that does the linear rational thinking. Yeah. So we tend to see everything out of there. But an important move for anybody is to make the move, and this is supposed to be an eye, but to make the move from there to there. Yeah. And so then, I mean, that becomes awareness. Yeah. Yeah. And then one of the important things that you start to realize is that the cortex, so the bit that does the thinking, it's a very good tool. You can really use it as a tool. It's great for linear rational planning. Yeah. But there's 2 things that go on in the cortex. One is the thoughts that I deliberately think, like, what do I want for dinner? What ingredients do I need? Where do I need to go to buy them? What time do I need to leave the house? Blah, blah, blah. That's thoughts I deliberately think. But the cortex also does what I call thoughts thinking themselves. Yeah. So the cortex just produces thoughts all the time. And when you're stuck in there, it's very easy to think that's me thinking it. Yeah. But actually, it's not me thinking it at all. That's just thoughts thinking themselves. A bit like Tiff was saying, you know, once you get out there, you realize, oh man, there's a whole load of thoughts thinking themselves. Yeah. And that was one of the things that the Buddha talked about. It's one of the things that Darren Brown uses now, is you can prime that part of the brain in different clever ways, yeah, for it to become either a conditioned stimulus response or just to get in a particular state. That's how Darren Brown does a lot of the clever things he does. Yeah. Because people aren't aware that he's doing it to them, yeah. But it conditions their cortex, and then they start doing things or thinking things, and they think it's them that's thinking it. But it's not. It's purely because they've been conditioned.
One of the things I was reading about recently with regards to Darren Brown was a lot about him using tactics to confuse the more logical part of our brain, which basically cause a disruption, which then set you back to going to primitive reflexes, which are either kind of yes or no, or being submissive in terms of your responses to things. So it's easier to become more suggestive if you're confused in that situation. So that's I believe is what the basis of his techniques are, to confuse the primitive brain by saying things like, have you ever seen a seagull fly backwards, is a common one. Yeah. And then making a suggestion after that, which make you much more susceptible to taking on board suggestions to do certain things. So
it sets you up for being conditioned. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
like subliminal messaging.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, Tiff. Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah. I find this area just incredibly fascinating. The more I've watched what goes on in there that I have got nothing to do with, really, the more interesting life has become.
Yeah, it's funny. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, Sammy, we've been doing a lot of work doing outreach with the NHS, haven't we? Because we've realised that actually, with the excess demand on the NHS for really primary care as regards to looking after people with the COVID, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with more kind of everyday type things. So us doing the outreach, how's that been going so far in terms of we've been getting some response, haven't we, from some of the doctors that are not too busy?
Yeah, I think it's really good to have like a personal relationship with them. So I've been contacting the secretaries of the consultants, and I think that's quite, because it does create that relationship and that personal kind of effect of, you know, we are here if you need us, and we have like got your back. So if you do need to refer anybody, then you can refer them to us, and that's absolutely fine, because then we can take the load off you, like you were saying. And we have been getting some quite good responses, and with what we discussed this week, then I'm going to be sending out some more to try and get some responses, and getting some meetings set up as well for you and then the consultants, and then trying to build relationships that way as well.
Yeah, brilliant. We've actually had quite a lot of cross-linking with the NHS in obviously it's very desperate times for everyone, but NHS and their staff in particular, it's been really hard time for them. So, I mean, anything we can do to help them would be really, really well received, hopefully. So it's really good. But I think being a doctor and a nurse in the NHS at the moment must be a real test of your kind of mental capacity in terms of the kind of stresses you must be under right now.
Well, and compassion, because that's the problem. They're very compassionate people. They're seeing all this suffering. It must be very hard. Yeah,
but I think what are your thoughts on the psychological implications of that long term for NHS staff and families of the NHS and people who are in that situation? Because it's pretty tough, really tough.
Yeah, one of the things that they say about trauma, is that the trauma is not in the event that happens. The trauma is what happens internally for people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things that, just the psychological and physiological load that they're under is going to put their autonomic nervous system under more stress. And the problem when that happens is it's more likely that things will have a bigger effect on them. Yeah. So it can kind of get fused in some really unhelpful neurological structures at the simplest level. And I think with this kind of thing, it can run for years. Yeah, it's not that you should say everybody in the NHS is going to be traumatized.
No, not at all. But
there's going to be a whole bunch of people in there who've got, who are mildly more susceptible to this kind of stuff. And this stuff could run for years. There's a chap called Peter Levine. So you've probably heard of him, and he's written, if you like, a great first aid book for this kind of stuff. He's written like a first aid book for children, but also for adults. And there's just a whole load of stuff in there, which doesn't pathologize any of it. But once that's happened, what are the kind of things that you can do personally, or what are the kind of things that you can offer to people who've been through that kind of stuff. And it's not saying that they're broken or they're unwell, but it's just like how to get them back on track again. And I think once that's done, I think we could have a lot of problems, you know, in the next 4 or 5 years.
So, and obviously for the people watching this at home, and obviously some of them will be NHS staff as well, I imagine, but for the people watching this at home, just general public, as it were, how would you say that they're going to be affected longer term by these the desperate times that people are in now?
Well, I mean, there's a whole load of stuff, isn't there? You know, some people are going to be fearing for their jobs and their livelihoods and all that kind of stuff. Trying to reassure them about that stuff is not really true. It's not true. You know what I mean? It's like more about how do you cope with the uncertainty, but bring it down to levels that is not going to have a long-term effect on you, So there's a great book called Physical Intelligence by one of the ladies called Claire Dawn. I'd give a copy of that to every NHS worker, You know, it explains what you can do physiologically, you know, just to downrate your systems a bit. And I think one of the big things is, how can I put it? This is not to be rude in any way, but we've got used, if you like, to the Disneyfication of the world. It's like going to Disney World. You go on dangerous things, but you know it's going to be okay. So we all kind of believe, oh, well, if they're letting us do that, you know, like go on this zip wire or whatever, it must be okay. And to some extent, I think a lot of us assume everything was going to be okay and was just going to carry on. And I think that something like this, it was like the Great Depression for the Americans and the psychological effect it had on them. You know, they believed in the American dream that everything was always going to get better and go onwards and upwards. And the Great Depression, it shocks people into realizing, do you know what? The world isn't like that. The world just doesn't get better and better and better, regardless of what we do. It actually has we have an effect on it. And I think it's going to shock a lot of people who were right in that dream, that everything was always going to be okay, nothing was ever going to get worse. I think it's going to have a big effect on those people. But I think it offers a big opportunity, It offers a big opportunity, not that we would ever have wanted this to happen, but for people to kind of wake up and it's like, oh, no, the world is, you know, works out well or is useful or is not useful, depending upon what we do. We can't just rely on what other people are doing. It actually depends on the small acts of kindness. Like you say, sometimes when we're feeling a bit stressed, you know, we can get very judgy about whether somebody's exactly 2 meters away from somebody else. We can kick off at them. You know, everything gets put into good or bad. I'm good. You know, the other people are bad. And I saw
a great T-shirt the other day, Barry. This chap had social isolation on the back of his T-shirt. Have you seen it, Sam?
No, I don't think so.
No. It had big letters, social isolation on the back, and it said, you know how it says in a dictionary, it says definition, and it had if I can turn around and punch you, you're too effing close.
Wow.
I thought it was quite amusing. But it's very interesting. But I think one of the things that we talk about with our staff in the business is probably more so with the therapists, but we should really talk about it with the reception staff as well, and the admin team, is about controlling the controllable. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but it's it kind of really sits with me very well, because you shouldn't really worry about the things that you can't control, but stay in control of the things that you can control. So you can worry about them, of course, because it's pretty worrying, the situation at the moment, but there's not a lot of it we can control. We've got to just sit it out and hope to God that it comes to an end sooner or later. But we've got to control the things we can control, which is putting my shirt and tie on and going to work when I can do, keeping some regular routine, looking after all my staff. They're all things that I can control.
Yeah.
I can't control what goes on outside my house at the moment. So, and I never could do anyway. So there's no point worrying about it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And just showing people just small acts of kindness. I've noticed just walking
Yeah, for
down the
sure.
street, everyone's very fearful.
Yeah.
So, you know, people aren't really smiling. People aren't really, you know, interacting with one another with how they used to do. So what I've been doing is just giving people a smile. If they back up because they think I'm too close, just smile at them and just move to the side. And it's just like, I understand. It's showing them, you know, that empathy of, I understand your fear and I'm going to respect it, but give them a little smile and just keep walking.
Mm.
Yeah.
I remember when I was about 35, I came back went out to Thailand for a month, and I was out there. And when I came back, I couldn't understand why whenever I was walking around London, people started to smile at me. And it was only when I turned around and looked in the kind of shop window that I realized I had a smile on my face most of the time. And it was because most Thai people smile, yeah? And it is infectious. So when I came back, I thought, I was checking my flies, you know, I thought I've got a face, you know. It was just that I got infected by this smile, yeah? And it was passing itself on.
Yeah.
It's important. It really is.
Yeah, it's really important. I learned a very important phrase the other day. Perception is reflection. So what we see in others is often a reflection of ourselves. So I think if you see people that are fearful, and you what you can control is whether you're smiling or not. So that's the only thing you can control in that situation. If they look fearful, then I think if you give them energy and give them positive energy, then it does come off, and hopefully you do infect them positively, like Barry's just said as well. So I think that's very perceptive of Tiffany, for sure. It's brilliant. Yeah, good. Brilliant. So it's approaching that the hour of power. So or the power hour, I should say. So Barry, what would be your top 3 tips to leave people with at home that are looking to improve their resilience or make a start with controlling the controllable?
Oh, God, well, the thing is, I've been seeing loads of fantastic stuff on the internet about this. Yeah. So, you know, so structure, physical resilience, exercise, all of that kind of stuff. So I won't go over that, yeah. But one of the things is begin to recognize that you have thoughts that you deliberately think, and that there are thoughts that think themselves. And you can't control the thoughts that think themselves. They will just continue, yeah. If you get to the point where you can notice them and not act out on them, gradually over time, they will diminish. So I would say taking that position, yeah, where you're not thinking about everything, but you just become aware, that I would say is number 1. If everybody did that, we'd be living in a different world, yeah. The other thing that a lot of the research has shown is that the more interoceptive awareness we have, literally the more resilient we are and our brain is, yeah?
Yeah, 100%.
So, and that's the ability to have a felt sense, yeah? If people don't understand that, then it is really, I say to people, it's like if I tell you to just notice your big right toe, can you notice it? They sit there and they go, oh yeah, I can, yeah. I wasn't noticing it before you. And so just doing that, yeah, becoming a bit more aware of your body, you don't need to think of that as something that you should or shouldn't do. But the more that happens, the more the brain responds better to stress, yeah. So that's the second thing that I would say. And the third thing that I would say is really simple, is that have Epsom salts baths, yeah. That is a really effective way of just introducing things into your body that, you know, will just replenish stuff. So they're not maybe my top 3, but they're the top 3 that not a lot of people talk about at the moment.
Yeah. Excellent. Tiff, what would your top 3 tips be?
Firstly, I'd say conscious relaxation. So making a conscious effort to relax, however it is that you you best relax, whether that's a bath or, you know, reading or meditation. So taking time each day for self-care, whether it's, you know, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever, but making sure that you do that each day. Second, exercise, physical, moving your body physically. And third, being aware of what you're absorbing into your subconscious.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I
Yeah,
really like
being
that.
very aware of who you're speaking to, what you're listening to,
Yeah.
what you're watching, because it has an effect. So those are my top
Yeah.
three.
So Alien versus Predator is not a good idea tonight then?
Maybe not.
No. Excellent. Sammy, what would your top 3 tips be?
Okay, so my first one would be time management. So you don't want to lose, as you say, like the motivation and the rhythm of day-to-day stuff, especially because you don't want to just be like, I just want to watch TV all day, every day. You want to keep doing things that make yourself happy, like go for a run, have a nice walk, you know, maybe watch a film, maybe, like you say, do some meditation, maybe color in a book or something. Just something like that. So definitely time management. My second one would be just be kind, like Tiff was saying, just smile at people, make sure that you're spreading positiveness everywhere you go, even though some people can be a little bit like, oh, I don't really want to know, but still spread it, because at least then you know that you're doing it. And my third would probably be just stay happy, just stay positive. Really, that's the best thing you can do. That's what you need to do throughout these times.
Really good. Really good. I think mine, if you wanted to know, would be. Do you want to know?
Yes.
Go on then.
Okay. Right. So mine would probably be to keep an end in sight. I think that can be what I've learned about goals and goal setting is that if you don't have a goal of some description, whether that be getting to the end of each day, getting to the end of the week, getting to the end of the month, getting to the end of the year, you kind of lose track of things. So that fits nicely with what Sam was saying, that if you don't have any structural plan there, then it becomes a little bit disorganized in here, and then the thoughts start to build up and it becomes overwhelming. And the resilience is not so much you trying to be strong, it's you being beaten down by all of these thoughts that are kind of coming your way because you don't have that kind of organization in terms of structure. I think perception is reflection. I think that's massively powerful for me. I'm sure it probably resonates a lot with a lot of people, that a lot of the energy that we give out, and we don't talk about energy in terms of the woo-woo type sense of it. It's just what we're doing to the world around us is a reflection of what we see in the world around us, is a reflection of what we are giving out to the world as well. So I think, like Tiff mentioned, like Sam mentioned, the more happy and outwardly loving we can be, I think that's going to make a huge difference with ourselves and with the people around us. I think surrounding yourselves with people that have good energy and give back to you as well, I think that's really important. I think when you're around people that take from you all the time, that's going to take away from your ability to be resilient as well. So being around people that build you rather than take you down, and just like Tiff said, shutting some of that stuff off, where maybe it's the news and you're being overwhelmed by that. That's a hugely important thing. That it's important to know what's going on, but not important to be overwhelmed by it 24/7 all day long, every day. I think a lot of people are realizing that, and I see a lot more people outside doing exercise now rather than inside. I've been overwhelmed by the news, but those would be my top 3.
Nice.
Good. Well, I'd just like to say thank you.
If we did all of those, I think they'd be doing pretty well, yeah?
Yeah, I think that would be brilliant if people could do that. We'd love to hear what your top 3 are if you're watching this at home. Say, what would your top 3 tips been? We've talked about giving and like being around people that want to give to you, that give to you just as much as you give to them. So what would your top 3 tips be to share to the rest of the Facebook population out there, and spread some love rather than spreading the virus? I think that's very important. But I'd just like to say thank you so much for participating in this tonight. It's been great to have you on board, and thank you both to Sam and Tiffany. I know it's very different in terms of what your boss would ask you to do, but I think I'd love to invite you guys back. It's been really good, and I think you've got a lot to give to people, so I think it'd be great. And Barry, thank you so much for being involved as well. It's great to allow our Facebook group to kind of see some of the stuff that you're doing as well. And I'd love to get you back on actually and talk much more about the neuroscience aspects as well. I love that geeky stuff, so that'd be great. Brilliant. Good. Well, for now, it's bye-bye from me, and good night from the rest of the team there. But thanks very much for watching. We'll see you all soon. Take care.
Bye.